Okay, great. Welcome everyone to our supermarket sustainability report deep dive. Before we get started, let's just go through a couple of introductions so you know who's talking to you. My name is Kelton. I am the author of the sustainability report. I'm going to be going through a couple of the headlines of the data and a couple of the interesting bits and pieces I think will be good for you guys to hear. With me here is my brilliant colleague, Helen.
Hello.
Product specialist, big data consultant. She'll be walking through some of the techniques we use to get at the data that we're going to be talking to you about today. We are obviously running this webinar in the aftermath of releasing our supermarket sustainability report. If you haven't read the report yet, why not? It's great. I think it's absolutely worth the time, and I have absolutely no vested interest in you doing that. But don't worry about it if you haven't read it. It is available for free, ungated on our website, wordnerds.ai. We'll also send it around an email after all this so that you can take a look at it yourselves. Right, so I think it's also important for us to just lay out who this webinar is for. First off, anyone involved in supermarkets, anyone involved in customer insights, no matter the sector, and anyone for whom sustainability is a big issue. I think anyone who fits into one of those three categories there will be drawing a lot from this today. Now, if you are all three of those things, then, oh boy, like strap in, this is gonna blow your mind. So let's just walk through what is on the menu today and what exactly we're going to be covering. There are three courses. I abandoned this metaphor like almost instantly, so don't worry about like trying to translate the food metaphors in your head as we go. But the first course is the headlines, what you should know about the report. I think the really kind of key bits that are interesting for everyone to hear and I think relevant kind of across the board. The second section is the really interesting stuff. I think it's what you can action right now, whether you're one of those supermarket people, one of those insights people. This is the stuff that can be done with the data as found in the report. And some of the stuff we go through as well is actually elements that I've drawn out, kind of narratives on customer perception since we've released the report as well. So that is some exclusive content y'all are going to get today. And the last section is a little bit of an overview of how we actually drew out those insights that we're going to be showcasing today. And for those of you who stick with us right through to the bitter end, there will be a little bit of an offer for you as well. So, right, let's get started with those key findings, the big headlines. First off, what it was that we did, I think it's worth covering. We looked at 6 months of data leading up to January 2022, all the way through the end of January, kind of the January. There were 15 supermarkets across the UK, the 15 most popular supermarkets involved in our data set, over 800,000 tweets and 18 million words, which every time I see that, I cringe just a little bit. It was a lot, but I think that gave us a really good holistic view of what it was that we were dealing with in terms of sustainability and customer perception over that period. So the major areas of discussion that the report covers, well, there were a lot of them. Plastics and packaging, there was waste, whether it's food, material, or logistical. Vegetarian and veganism came out of it as well. We then jumped into Veganuary and its various outcomes before launching into deep dives on the supermarket brands from Aldi to Tesco. Now, we do not have nearly enough time to go over all of those insights that can be found in the report today, so I'm just going to pick out the really big bits that I think you'll all be interested in. The first kind of section that I'd like to talk through is what consumers are actually talking about, some of the big themes that came out holistically across the course of the report. First off, veggie and vegan diets, they're becoming more popular. Yeah, everyone knows that. I think that some of the stats that came out of that, though, are the really intriguing bits. There were almost 10,500 posts on this topic. But what came out of this was there's clearly a lot of nuance between why people have chosen to pursue these diets. And these nuance affects the issues they care about, the discussions they're having, and the areas they're most vocal in, and ultimately their purchasing habits. So for instance, vegans who are more likely to object to inhumane treatment of animals are more likely to complain about meat-like alternatives where, you know, they don't actually want to be eating something that feels and tastes like meat. But on the other end of the scale, someone on a plant-based diet for the sake of the environment and its environmental impact is much more likely to seek out locally sourced fruit and veg and comment on packaging and carbon footprint of these items. And we were able to pin a number on these things as well. The first of those two is the smaller contingent in the data set, around 1.6% of conversations relating to that topic of veggie diets related to this issue of sort of meat-like products, and around 2.8% related to the idea of, seeking out locally sourced fruit and veg for the sake of a sort of an environmentally minded vegetarian diet. Now, next up, the concept of sustainability and what is environmentally friendly. Well, that came up a lot, and it is incredibly amorphous. I think what sort of became obvious to me as I was moving through the data set was that many discussions just went in circles round and around due to participants simply not kind of working with the same sets of facts. For instance, one discussion where this was particularly prominent was in the use of plastic versus paper bags. So around 18% of discussions around cardboard and paper packaging were dominated by customers complaining about loose fruit and veg not being available in paper bags as widely as they'd like. But then others pointed out that plastic wrapped foods actually last for longer, thus reducing food waste. And so it became really quite difficult for them working with those different sets of facts to actually quantify the relative impacts of certain decisions. And that's what leads us to point 3, I think, which is a very important one, is that supermarkets are expected to blaze a trail. They have far more data available to them on what makes the greatest impact on the environment, and consumers are limited in their decision-making by the bounds of what supermarkets decide. Given the retail sector is pretty much one of the most tangible representations customers have of sustainability at large, the supermarkets are expected to lead the way on issues like this to reflect kind of consumer intent, and this bears out in the data. There's a 26% difference in volumes of your net zero objectives kind of as retailers over personal carbon footprints. People are more likely to talk about them in terms of what supermarkets should be doing than what they feel themselves they need to be doing.
That's actually a really interesting point, I think, because we've seen in conversations with Coca-Cola that they feel like they have almost 10 times more backlash, shall we say, over plastic bottle consumption compared to, or production, compared to Pepsi or Nestle. In reality, probably those 3 brands probably, create a rather similar, albeit very large amount of plastic. But it's definitely a reflection of the size of the brands. I think that you feel a lot more expectation from consumers to be acting in the best ways possible. We also have an example of what can happen if you make a backstep for whatever reason in the eyes of your customers. So here's an example from actually early in the pandemic, or during COVID back in 2020. We were working with Sainsburys, and we noticed that there was a bit of backlash coming in on their social channels around a decision that they had made to change their egg box packaging from cardboard to plastic. You'll also notice that we've included Tesco in the analysis at the top of this graph here. It shows how quickly the conversation started to scale, and actually at the end of June it showed no signs of slowing down. So we decided to flag it to the team at Sainsburys, who immediately got their social team to put some comms out explaining that the shortage, explaining the reason that they moved from cardboard to plastic packaging was due to a pulp shortage that was kind of came about through a lack of access to the cardboard pulp because of issues with caused by the pandemic and lots of people being on furlough. The result of a really clear communication strategy and being completely transparent over the decision to change from cardboard to plastic meant that actually what we saw off the back of those changes in comms strategy was that Sainsbury's managed to get ahead of the trend, and actually the amount of conversations started to decline. What we can see though is Tesco's reaction was a bit slower than Sainsbury's, and they continue to kind of feel the heat from customers before again they put a similar communication strategy out. I think it just shows that in all of these instances, all of these small decisions that you're making that feel like you're turning your backs on environmental decisions are definitely being picked up in by customers in this space, and definitely reflect the findings that we found as part of the report, that you are the trailblazers, and customers expect a great deal from you across every type of product and packaging decision.
I think that's a great example too, just of kind of the importance of keeping a minute eye on these things, because they can just change like that. Like, you know, you can kind of see there how rapidly that volume increases over a short period of time. So yeah, being able to have a handle on these things and get a handle on it quickly is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, totally.
Now, kind of just going back to the headlines real quick, I did mention that we talked about Veganuary. And of course, Veganuary always involves a huge product push. There's always a huge amount of comms going out about it. And especially in the aftermath of COP26, customers were watching with an especially critical eye. So there's a couple of headlines to cover here too. Obviously, top of the list, we have our overall victor. Co-op was crowned this year as the victor of Veganuary, according to our report, because their grow range, their sort of own brand vegan offering, gained the most overall positive sentiment in discussions online. And their fishless fillet was kind of the thing that clinched it for them. It accounted for almost a fifth of their Veganuary conversations, sort of relating to veggie and vegan diets, which I think is a pretty astounding number. You can see the sort of overall leaderboard there. Now, the fishless fillet was very much talked about, but this was absolutely blown out of the water by Aldi's vegan no chicken, which was by far the most popular individual product with almost twice as many mentions over the course of the month. And it accounted for 21.3% of overall Aldi Veganuary chat and had an overall sentiment score of 59. So that was a pretty big win for them. I think a special mention needs to go out to M&S as well. They saw a significant increase, 3 times the volume from December to January in terms of vegetarian and vegan diet kind of conversation. And the sentiment on average increased from 44 to 60, which is a massive jump around plant-based ranges December to January. So I think that they do get a special mention there as well. And any discussion of Veganuary would not be complete without mentioning McDonald's, whose plant stole the show across non-supermarket food retailers with 4 times the mentions of the fishless fillet and Aldi's no chicken combined. So, I mean, good effort there, McDonald's, really. That was just a really solid marketing effort that clearly a lot of people got very interested. So this is all well and good. I think those headlines are interesting. They tell a little bit of a story of what happened in the 6 months leading to January, but ultimately, they're not actionable. To actually, affect change, what you really need are those specific, measurable, actionable pieces that sit below those headlines. And sometimes they'll be readily apparent, but often they'll be things that you didn't even know you didn't know. Unknown unknowns, we call them. For instance, from the kind of data that we gathered for the sustainability report, we were able to perform a linguistic analysis of customer conversations around subjects like product packaging and vegan diets to determine how personally customers related to these issues that was visualized here in this graph. This is a piece of analysis we've done since the report as well, and drew out some interesting insights, I think. So in short, the higher the bubble is on the graph, the more personally they feel connected to the issue, and the further right the bubble, the happier they are about it. For instance, that little tiny purple bubble near the bottom there represents the topic of responsible sourcing, a topic customers clearly feel is the responsibility of supermarkets. Similar in sentiment, but much higher in customer closeness, is that teal bubble up there, which represents veggie and vegan diets. Customers relate to this issue on a personal level and see themselves broadly as being in control of it. Now, the larger issues like plastics and packaging, vegan diets, and overpackaging of products are represented by larger bubbles overall. Now, this provides a few opportunities to affect change in your interactions with customers. I think there's a couple of recommendations that can come out of this. So recommendation 1 is that you could take the opportunity to invest a lot in education pieces on issues like responsible sourcing that customers really don't feel that attached to, but actually focus on increasing that customer awareness and that customer closeness. The second recommendation I would put out is focusing on issues much higher up the graph, but much lower in sentiment, that stuff in the kind of upper left-hand corner there, to ensure that you're working to improve issues that customers clearly feel most attached to, things like cardboard packaging or carrier bags, stuff like that. Either way, by visualizing the kind of this idea of customer closeness, how personally connected customers felt to each respective issue, it becomes much easier to draw out these smaller scale, but very important insights that might otherwise be missed. And I say very important, these are absolutely crucial. And, without these kind of, these minute insights, there's not a lot of point in doing the kind of reporting in the first place. Now, we have a word for this, or a term for it rather, but I think that Helen is a much better place to explain it than I am, so I'm just going to pass right over.
Oh, thank you very much. So so we talk about third level insights at Wordnerds as specific, actionable and measurable insights that can really affect change in your organization and help you drive improvements that ultimately make a difference to your customer experience. The way that we deliver those third level insights, or the way that we identify those third level insights, is first to identify at what level we're coming in at the data. So our first level tends to be category level data, things like particular issues like, is it a delivery issue or an online issue or a payment issue, those kind of things. And then we talk about specifiers, so those sort of subcategories within that top level or overarching category. That's the sort of second level down. And the third level is the detail that we need in order to understand how we can make things better, how we can change things, why the problem is being caused. And to give you an example of that, we've got an example from one of our supermarket clients who identified third level insights within some of the data that they were looking at, as in the first level, it was a damaged product. In the second level, it was the pink roses were the particular instance that were being damaged. And the reason for the reason or the detail that we needed in order to help them improve was that water was leaking from the plastic bags and damaging the box that they were being delivered in. So when the roses were being delivered, they were turning up brown and mushy, and nobody wants that for their pink roses, really, do they? I think kind of to take this a step further, there are a few things that we find, or a few struggles that we find are fairly common with lots of our insight teams that they come to us with. The first is that finding third level insights when you're manually reading through comments are really easy, but to do that at a level where you're getting the amount of data that typically large brands like supermarkets
18 million words
18 million words, yeah, is pretty difficult. So when we're talking about being able to act at a level of there's a damaged product somewhere in the data, you can't act at that level. You can't really even monitor it or do anything about it because there are so many products that it could be referring to. That's too difficult. Potentially we can act at the second level, at that specifier level. We could read through every comment relating to damaged products of the pink roses and infer that, at some point we might find the detail that we need. But again, it's not ideal. It could still take forever. And so what we really need to get to is a way of finding that third level insight without having to read through every comment. And this is where tools can either be your best friend or your worst enemy, because training an AI or using keyword taxonomies, which I know a lot of you will be familiar with, doing that at the category level is really easy. Trying to find a bunch of keywords to describe damaged products is a relatively easy job and pretty quick to do. And similarly, you can train AIs for those kind of things, because at a category level, we kind of know what we're looking for. There are key things that you want to monitor, and definitely damaged products would be one. Potentially we could train an AI or get to a taxonomy at the specifier level, but I pity any insight team or insight analyst who has to train an AI or build keyword taxonomies for every single product or issue that you could find. That's still quite a lot to do, isn't it, really? But actually trying to train an AI or build a taxonomy for that third level detail would pretty much be impossible. Firstly, we don't know all of the problems that we're going to encounter. We don't know all of the language that consumers are going to use. And actually the level of detail that we can get into, there are quite literally millions of topics and millions of issues that could be working. So that could be happening. So yeah, trying to train an AI or rely on a tool to get that far can be really tricky.
I think that it's very much worth kind of going through now some of the stuff that we drew out in our report, because we have just covered how difficult that can be to get through. And I mean, surprise, surprise, we can get there. I think it's fair to say we kind of drew that out from one of the supermarket clients that we work with, and they had gone through like around a dozen
Something
different
like
tools.
that, 15, 20 tools.
Yeah, before they actually, arrived at one that they thought was, up to the job. But I thought I would kind of share some of the third level insights that we drew out to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about here from the report. The first of those was, what I'm going to say was the milk carton move in January. So Morrison's launched a debate that took the internet by storm in January, you may recall. Should we all start using the sniff test? There is some little PR bungle or maybe kind of purposeful bit of guerrilla marketing there that went on that that put out that statement, and there was a huge amount of discussion about it online. And ultimately, top level numbers were on their side. Around 56% of people getting involved in those conversations were giving positive responses. But if that's all you were looking at, if you're looking at the sort of the category and subcategory there, you go, okay, right, this is a good thing that's come out of this. We can chalk that up as a win. Something that wasn't brought up so frequently, but was a very important issue for a number of people, was the issue of anosmia. People bringing up concerns about how this sort of idea of a sniff test would impact people who lost their sense of smell due to COVID. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it sucks. It's very disorienting, and not being able to, smell things to see if they're off. You do kind of need like a little number on the side there to tell you, or at least give you a guide. So yeah, I think this was something that drew out of that overall positive sentiment, but there was that sort of deeper level of issue that people were having that was giving me pause. I think another issue that came out of the discussions around sort of vegan and veggie diets was the idea of, these items cutting in on the free-from ranges that you'd see in various supermarkets kind of across the UK. It was a small issue by volume, only around 390 posts in total of the over 800,000 that we saw in the course of this data set, but it has an absolutely outsized impact on affected customers. It had an incredibly low sentiment score at around 30. And of course, for someone who suffers from celiac disease or something like that, a condition where, they really cannot eat these things medically, that causes a really huge issue. And I think that when you are looking at such a small scale issue, that can be quite easy to dismiss if you're just looking in terms of that first and second level category level insight. But once you start pulling this stuff out, and introducing it to your colleagues, they're really going to want to hear what you have to say, because this is the kind of thing that really affects your individual customers on a day-to-day basis. So once you've drawn some of these insights out, they're going to be in demand, right? People are going to want to hear more of what you have to say. And we know that insights people, like, as we said at the start, that kind of 1/3 of our audience, we're going to say, you will be constantly bombarded with questions, new research topics, ideas for projects that people have had. Your backlog of work is just going to start rising and rising. You're going to have, a million tasks that have built up behind you, looming over you. And when there's a turnaround on insights that's, approximately 6 weeks, we'll say that, we haven't heard that anywhere, and your actual existing tech stack isn't really sort of listening to the words, listening to those third level insights that your customers are putting out there, things can get very, very challenging for you very, very quickly. And you're going to end up like that poor little cat on the Mac there, who just is slapping away at the keyboard and getting nowhere. So I think now would be a good time to pass over to you, Helen, to explain how we can pull you guys up from this terrible, terrible pit you have found yourselves in.
Thanks, Kelton. Yeah, so we speak to insight teams all the time who are incredibly busy and having a really huge backlog of work. And so what we thought we'd do is firstly just explain a bit about Wordnerds if this is the first time you're meeting us. So we class ourselves as the world's second best text analytics platform. Obviously, humans are the best because we bring context and, in your cases, expertise around your business. But really what we do is Wordnerds take any corpus of text to discover what people are actually saying in that data set, allow you to put a number on any decision or any issue within a couple of hours. And we genuinely mean that. And so what we thought we'd show you today is just a little example of how we start to surface these issues and surface these issues and things that are kind of interesting and useful in a matter of 15 minutes rather than things taking 6 weeks for a data scientist to train and look for. So for the purposes of the demo, what we've done is just pulled some social data on the supermarkets. And at the moment, what we're doing is looking at the last 7 days for tweets directed at Morrisons. If you're watching from Morrisons and you'd like more information on any of the stuff we're about to show you, we're really happy to kind of talk you through it. So do let us know. Unfortunately, it's been a pretty tricky week, I would say, for the digital team at Morrisons. With a significant number of issues that we found around card payments being blocked and kind of payments being failed. So what we're looking at right now is a view of the trending topics that have occurred in the last 7 days to Morrisons. And within each of these things, we can start to click into these instances and look at what people are actually saying. And what we tend to be finding is lots of people being bombarded by text and email because there are some payment issues still outstanding from, I think, last week, and we can read through all of those. We've also got some other examples of things that people are talking about, feeling particularly negative about, particularly around the sustainability topics that we're talking about at the moment. Morrisons are pretty well, customers at Morrisons are feeling pretty negative about the fact that they're currently selling peat compost rather than peat-free compost. And yeah, there's some relevant backlash there with similar levels of sentiment, and we can look at how that's changed over the course of the week and whether or not that conversation is getting better or worse. What we're also looking at this stage is topics that are specific to Morrisons that we aren't seeing in other supermarkets. The fact that the level of conversation is particularly unique suggests that it's conversations that are happening that are specific to Morrisons and not the other supermarkets. So what I thought I'd do is start to dig into some of those issues around those payments failed. Now, typically speaking, if you were an insights analyst looking at this type of problem on your own, you'd either be reading through lines and lines and lines of feedback in Excel spreadsheets or in your CRM system. That can take ages. It's a not very accurate way of getting a real sense of what's happening. And to be honest, if you are an insights analyst at a large B2C organization, you're probably not even doing it manually. There's probably a level of keyword taxonomies going on in there as well. What I'm about to show you is the way that Wordnerds handles taxonomies. We tend not to focus on keywords and building them that way, and the reason for that is they're really great if you're looking for very specific things like show me all of the comments relating to a particular store location. Less good though when you're not sure exactly what the language is that the customer might be using, or the variations in language and keywords is too much. So what I'm going to do is show you how we do this using AI and linguistics. So what we're going to do is look for lots of people who are talking about payment issues like we've just seen in the comments on that trending page. So the first thing we do is give the AI an example of the type of complaint that we're looking for. So I'm going to start with my payment has failed, and I'm going to hit go. And what the system does is we have loaded up a sample batch of about 10,000 sentences from across the industry, so not just Morrisons, from looking at every supermarket, and the system is making decisions around other examples that might be similar to the example that I gave of my payment has failed, and the results that I'm hoping to get back will hopefully give us some examples that are really similar in meaning to my payment has failed, but potentially using much more different language to do that. And it's a really simple system in order to get that as accurate as we want to. So the examples that I'm looking at the moment are, I'm not getting the service I paid for, not exactly related to what we want, so we click no on that. We've got some instances here of you couldn't take my payment, which is exactly the problem that we're looking for, so we'll take that one. Not getting the items that they've paid for is related, but not quite what we're after either. And again, we're pretty much cashless, and I've no longer have my receipt. That's again not the one we're looking for, but my payment has failed for another order. That's perfect. my payment has been declined again. So there's a few really good examples here that we've got still unable to pay. So again, we can see the language changing. And if we just hit retrain with those tags that we've just given the system, actually what we'll start to see is our AI and machine learning starting to take effect, and learning and understanding from the information that we've just given it. And what we should start to see when the results come back this time is a much tighter data set surrounding and much better examples. So now the examples are looking really interesting. You can't take payment, we're cancelling payments after delivery. We've got payments have declined twice a day, continuing to be worrying. Telling me you can't take a payment, the changes to payment authentication has changed. So all of these things are looking really, really positive in terms of what we're after. So we'll give all of these a tick. Overages, that could be an issue that we're interested in as well. Find payments, or mark all of these. And we'll move on to the next page. And similarly, we're sort of seeing other language. What's significant here, though, is that I haven't had to guess or understand the language or the keywords that are coming through to find all of the instances that are coming through there. You know, the language is very different, but they're all being captured, which is brilliant. Once we've got the system up to a level of accuracy that we're happy with, we then enable that theme. And we can apply that historically to the data, and that allows us to then go and look at a data set from the perspective of here's a large data set with everything in, to here's a very specific bunch of instances that are surrounding the areas of the data that we cared about. And that's exactly what we did with the report. We trained a bunch of themes looking at all sorts of different topics and instances around the areas that we talked about before and presented in that report. So thanks very much for sticking with us. I guess the next stage is to talk to you about a little offer we'd like to give to you as part of as a thank you for attending this webinar. The first is a recording of this that you're able to share with colleagues as well, and a free copy of the Supermarket Sustainability Report. If you haven't read it, like I say, it's a really, really great asset, and one that we hope that you'll like. The second thing is we're also producing an event next week, which will focus on 3 steps to best-in-class CX. That'll be particularly useful for those of you in an insights role or looking at customer experience across retail. It's relevant for pretty much any industry. So yeah, hopefully you'll find some good information in that one. We're also offering, for those of you who'd like a little bit more of a look at our platform and what we could do, we're offering a free CX consultation to have a look at the data that you've got internally within your organisation and look at potentially what's siloed and what we might be able to help with. And as a kind of, to get you started, we're also offering a 50% discount on our Pay As You Nerd package, which I'm just going to talk you through now. So if you head to our website, you will find our Pay As You Nerd product on our pricing page. This is for one-off research or proof of value projects, so it allows you to trial the Wordnerds platform without a 12-month license. It gives you access to process 30,000 tweets, for example, or survey responses, and we're offering the first 10 customers who sign up to a 50% discount off this price, so we'll be looking at £2,025 if my math is correct. If you'd like to do that, all you need to do is click the book a call button, select the time that you're interested in speaking to us on, and then fill out your details, and either myself or one of my colleagues will be in touch to walk you through that booking process and see how we might be able to help.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming along and listening to us kind of go through all these various bits and pieces that we get very, very excited about. I mean, now you can deliver this 3rd level insight in your reporting. I hope this has helped you kind of visualize how that might be more accessible to you now. You know how you can cut that time to insight to just 15 minutes rather than those 6 weeks that we were talking about before. And you can socialize those findings with colleagues. You can make sure they are getting the right data at the right time without worrying about getting that Mount Everest like stack of paper landing up behind you. So that's all, folks. If you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch. Helen at Wordnerds.ai, that'll go straight to her. I mean, yeah, fill up her inbox, please do. And feel free to visit our website as well, wordnerds.ai. Yeah, with that, I think we'll bid you a fond farewell. Hope you all have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are, and we will see you next time.
Thanks very much. Bye, guys.